I have a slightly small confession to make. I have lied to you all. I have been forging in secret a master build to control all others, and into this build I have poured my modularity, my reusability, and my will to build the most massive scenery of all time. If you thought Minas Tirith was big, wait until you hear about the biggest build of them all. Welcome to the Imperial Palace on Terra. The king of stupidly massive scenery is back, ladies and gentlemen, and today we officially kick off an absolutely massive build of the most famous location in all of Warhammer, the Imperial Palace on Terra from the grimdark universe of Warhammer 30,000. This build is going to be an absolute monster, and I've actually already been working on it in disguise for well over a year. In today's video, we're going to explore how on earth I'm going to tackle such a massive behemoth of a build. We'll look at some techniques that we have at our disposal and give you guys an update on all of the progress so far, as well as the plan moving forward. So, without further ado, let's begin the biggest build in the history of Zorpazorp. Well, you know, for now at least. 28,000 years into the future, planet Earth, or Terra, looks very different. A massive industrialized rock covered with sprawling hive cities and manufactorum complexes, Terra is just one small civil war away from the most extreme dystopian hellscape, and not to worry, that civil war is well on the way. At the center of the vortex of political power on Terra is the Imperial Palace, an absolutely monstrous structure built on the bones of the old Himalayan mountains at the conclusion of the Unification Wars by the Emperor of Man. And this mighty fortification becomes the ultimate battleground when the traitor forces of the War Master besiege the cradle of humanity during the Horus Heresy. This is going to be a massive build. But up first, it's time to chat about today's sponsor. Now, you guys know I'm a sucker for epic battles on epic scenery, and Raid Shadow Legends has that in spades, with a whole host of awesome champions waging war across Teleria. Use my QR code or links down below to download Raid yourself to your mobile phone or PC while I tell you more about it. My favorite aspect of Raid isn't all the engaging mechanics of the different bosses or the fun of building up a wicked set of champions, it's actually the setting and the world building of the Raid universe. The level design and the lore is really stunning and an awesome nod to all the fantasy genres I love, and it makes for a really immersive gaming experience fighting your way across Teleria, although puzzling out each boss's combos and the best tactics to beat them is super fun too. There is a ton happening in Raid this month. They're bringing out 5 badass looking new champions that I can't wait to get my hands on, they're overhauling the champion vault, and they've got a load of awesome smaller updates as well. On top of that, Raid's running a huge series of summer splash events for the whole month, where you can get your hands on some incredible skins for everyone's favorite dwarf, Trunda. Oh, and one more thing.
Ultimate Death Knight, coming August 2022.
Make sure you get in now if you want to be a part of it. This is the best time to get started in Raid, and if you click on my link in the description or scan my QR code here on the screen, you'll get unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion Ina, 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in game. All of this treasure will be waiting for you here. Thanks so much for the sponsorship, Raid. Let's get back to the build. The palace is utterly monstrous. The circumference of the outer ring wall is measured in the thousands of kilometers. Its spires soar high into the clouds of Terra's atmosphere, and its subterranean foundations go deep down into the Earth's very mantle. So even I will admit that there's no way we can build this thing to scale. So we're gonna have to focus on a few key regions of the Imperial Palace.
Oh my god. Holy shit.
I don't know if the scale is translating at all or if you can even see my face in here, but this thing is ridiculous.
Now, I was greatly inspired by the huge layout I recently saw at Warhammer World. It is incredible. Their huge centerpiece layout, it's exactly the type of structure that I'm envisaging for my finished build.
Do you reckon the curator will murder me if I hop in the middle for a shot? I want to be in there, I want to be amongst it. Look at this thing. This is a drop pod smashing into a Reaver. No, a Warhound. Far out, that is wild.
A real slice of the landscape, showing a range of different environments as you move through the battlefield.
Weirdest thing is like seeing these boards and like getting all these little ideas, not just for builds and layouts, but for techniques. They've done this crazy thing here with all their smoke and explosions that they're using foam flock, like clump foliage, and spraying it black and light and grays. I've never seen explosions or like flames or smoke done like that before. It looks absolutely awesome. There's so much granularity and texture to the smoke. It's absolutely sick. I am definitely going to steal that.
But before I go diving into planning some monstrous layout, I need to face a few facts. The first is that as one man, I'm probably going to be chipping away at this build for many years to come, adding to it on and off with each new Heresy or 40k campaign, which means the board is going to need to be pretty modular, at least to start with, until the components get built into the final diorama landscape later on down the track. I'm also going to need a huge amount of space to set up that big final layout, and as I'm about to move to New Zealand and it will be some years before we can save up enough dollary-doos to finally get a mortgage and stop renting, leaving something this big permanently set up is not going to be possible for quite a while, so modularity here is absolutely key. The palace itself is divided into two regions, the inner and outer palace. There are all sorts of different key areas across both zones, from big towering battlements and buttresses, the hallowed halls of the Sanctum Imperialis and the Astronomicon, and then of course the more mundane urbanized areas of the general populace, like the many spaceports, the Administratum facilities, and the Petitioner's City. It is these regions of general grimdark urban environment that we'll be tackling first, as they're very easy to build in a modular fashion, but they're also perfect to adapt to all sorts of different campaigns. Now, as I hope many of you guys know, we are currently balls deep into the Horus Heresy here on Zorpazorp with our Mark of Calth narrative campaign, an absolutely mental battle report series featuring over 50,000 points worth of models, insanely mega gaming boards, and about 30 videos, including hobby vlogs, scenery videos, and of course the most intense cinematic battle reports you've ever seen.
And beats its void shields down with sheer relentless insolence. Then the Shadow Sword speaks, and a spear of white light kills the Warhound like the lance of some vengeful god.
If you haven't watched either of the first two episodes, please go and check them out right now. Just Alt-Tab, throw it in another window. I promise, even if you don't like gaming videos, you're going to be blown away. They're chock-a-block full of visual effects, epic dialogue, sound effects. I've really tried to break the mold with this format, and I think you guys will really love it. But as I was building the beginnings of this Imperial Palace board, I knew that its first use on the channel was going to be for this Mark of Calth campaign, which features a whole heap of awesome urban conflicts, eventually resulting in an insane fight over a massive structure known as the Guild Hall of the Merchants and Commerce Guild on Calth. So as I set about planning the Calth gaming boards, I was constantly designing them to work both for Calth and for key features of the Imperial Palace down the track, and the massive Guild Hall, as an example, is going to make for an amazing ruined Administratum facility in the Petitioner's City on the outskirts of the palace itself, which also seemed like a great place to begin the build, on the very edges of the Imperial Palace out at the Petitioner's City, working our way in towards the center over the coming years. I began construction on this portion of the board way back in August last year, deciding to build up the first city block of urban structures using exclusively Cities of Death plastic kits. There is a whole series of videos on this build journey if you guys would like to see more of the detail of the process involved, but there were a couple of massive takeaways. Before we dive in, if you're excited about the project, like the video, hit subscribe, and comment down below what location from all of Warhammer 30 and 40k you'd like to see me tackle next for a chance to win a reinforcement bundle for your Heresy forces, including the new plastic Sakaran battle tank and the Leviathan Siege Dreadnought. Firstly, it's all about verticality. The Imperial Palace board is eventually going to be besieged by Titans, so the structures we make need to be able to be interesting for Titans to play in and around, and those things are massive. We want them to smash through them, so the height of those buildings is absolutely essential. When the buildings are this big, they often become rather unplayable, as most of the structure needs to be pretty much fully intact for the buildings to go so high. So I developed a system of attachment for those old kits that glued the wall sections to the floor tiles so that each level became a floor and walls, and not walls and a roof like they were traditionally designed, which means, much like any D&D dungeon structure, you can simply pull open a building at any point and the inside is completely
playable. I also really love the claustrophobic aesthetic we see in so much of the artwork of all of the different hive cities in 40k and 30k, the crisscrossing gangways going backwards and forwards through the urban landscapes of the grimdark future, so I built a whole bunch of interchangeable walkways and doorways at different heights and spacings on all the buildings, so that no matter which configuration the buildings found themselves in, I could line up all those passageways and get a really interconnecting claustrophobic aesthetic. The other massive issue with towering structures in terms of playability is access from a gameplay point of view. How do models get to the upper levels realistically? I addressed this in the build in two ways. The kind of classic bunch of ladders everywhere, but I also put in some stairwells, in this case using some 3D printed stairs that I modified to fit the GW plastic kits, and then a fully motorized and functioning elevator. Yes, you heard me, a working elevator.
And I had this dream of making a real motorized elevator, zooming models up and down, so if you want to see that madness, comment down below, although I'm sure that's probably too out there even for you guys.
If you're new here and you want a glimpse of my scenery insanity, there's a whole video on that part of the build which will kind of illuminate that part of my mind. The final element of the modular section of Urban City is the ground itself, and I had these lovely Sector Imperialis plastic game tiles from GW, but in their classic 2x2 foot configuration, they're utterly useless for modularity, so I hacked them up into little 8x8 inch tiles so I could isolate the individual pieces of road and building foundation, and then that gave me a wonderful canvas to kit out a fully modular city. So that little part of the project is an amazing showcase of what I would call Technique 1 of our Imperial Palace building arsenal, plastic kit bashing. It's a fantastic method, and if you want to see more of it, go check out all those videos, but it's very expensive per square foot of models created. I could only make those chunks of the city so far because I have so many of the kits lying around from when I was a teenager. Our next two methods are much more inexpensive, starting off with scratch building. This is going to be the technique I employ for the really massive structures, like the walls and the fortifications and bulwarks of the palace itself, using techniques very similar to those employed to build the Minas Tirith megaboard. The Imperial Palace is not so much an edifice as it is handcrafted landmass. The artisan masters built upon Terra's greatest mountain range, the Himalaya or the Himalayan mountains, and transformed the monstrous peaks into the very bulwarks of the palace itself.
This is proper leveling up now. This thing is massive. I mean, it could use a little bit of that Geek Gaming snow powder, but yeah, the rock work, the ice. Look at the ice ollie down in the grooves. That looks absolutely sick. And pretty happy with these towers as well. Look at the flyrant up on the top. That's so cool.
It's literally carved out of the mountain. This means that the structure could quite feasibly feature extensive castle-style brickwork, which is then ornamented by futuristic stylings. There would also be many regions in the city that are of more of an old town aesthetic, mirroring building styles of ages past in homage to the early building styles and flavors of the various Masonic guilds. It's important to remember that my build of the Imperial Palace is set during the 30th millennium, and the palace is at the height of its secular glory, albeit mid-siege from Horus and his little naughty boys. So at this point, it hasn't been totally redesigned in the wake of the near-death and deification of the Emperor through the Imperial cult. In other words, not everything is super ornate and gothic like we know from 40k. In fact, the Prospero board that I saw in Warhammer Worlds when I was over in May is an excellent reference for the build style I'll be going with for many portions of the palace itself. In fact, when I set about preparing the board for our second Mark of Calth campaign mission, the assault on Landshire Port, we have a great example of this union of older and new Imperial architecture. Here you can see the Imperial sector ruins set up and painted in all their glory, with a little spoiler on the 3D printed sections we'll look at next, and then next to them is a sector of Landshire Port's Old Town district, which many of you will recognise simply as a tricked up section of Osgiliath from Middle-earth, with a few ornamenting pieces of futuristic elements.
Just putting in some little moderny bits. So obviously we're trying to blend like this Osgiliath board, Middle-earth Lord of the Rings board. We want to make it look like this is the old town of Calth. It's got that kind of cool Roman vibe which suits the Ultramarines anyway. But this is the damaged Landshear port. And this is Old Town, this is New Town. So we're putting a little bit of dressing, little computer consoles, little pipes into the old bit to kind of match the aesthetics and create this kind of cool section for the Ultramarines
Tired?
to breach through. Yeah, just a bit.
We also have a building taller than me.
Yeah.
Start down here. It has a working elevator in it, I think.
Oh, no, this one has to work an elevator. Show the people the elevator.
Look how tall this is.
This one needs the elevator.
Yeah, look how tall Lachlan is. I mean, Lachlan's only short,
it's like
but
fucking 2 feet taller than
yeah.
So we've got a little elevator. Down he goes. Then Tarnus can just, you know, go and have a little... Oh,
Whoop.
yep.
It's
Ollie's
okay.
just trashing the board. Up comes our little elevator.
That's absolutely pointless, but amazing.
Yeah.
But with the Roman aesthetic of the Ultramarines, the mesh of the two architectural styles works surprisingly well. And while it won't be as this exaggerated in the Imperial Palace with the kind of almost medieval stonework juxtaposed with the Imperial elements, it's nice to see that concept working in operation, and it's a good illustration of the concept. So that's technique 2. Big, beautiful scratch build components. That's going to make it a lot cheaper and a lot easier to do the big, bulky pieces, and it's also going to fit quite well with the lore as well. The third technique, which I've begun to use quite extensively, is 3D printing. This is a whole challenge in and of itself, and I've got a couple of videos dedicated specifically to the elements I've built using these techniques coming up in the following weeks, focusing on the huge Guildhall / Administratum complex and a huge bunker complex, perfect for either spaceship or large fortification interiors, so stay tuned for those.
So this is an absolute load of 3D prints. There is so much here. The boys have done amazing. Adam, Felix, James, I love you.
FDM 3D printing can achieve some great results, especially for the economy of scale, but it does present its own challenges too. But I built this huge cathedral in basically about a week, not including the printing time, which would have been pretty much impossibly to scratch build in that time, or insanely expensive to do it with plastic kit bashing. So FDM 3D printing really does have some advantages as well. So stay tuned for those videos because they are really, really cool projects. The Cathedral Components are 3D files by the amazingly talented Andy from Warlayer, and they were printed for me by the handsome Adam and Felix from Inferno Hobbies. The Bunker Complex was sent to me by an awesome family-run business, OTP Terrain, who supply amazing printed pieces across the world. I've got everyone's links in the description, but as I said, you'll see all of these pieces in much greater detail very soon. But overall, I'm really happy with the start I've made on this pretty gargantuan project. And to be honest, with a build this big, that's really half the battle. By setting small, achievable goals that create tangible results, the build is starting to gather a bit of steam. I've got the beginnings of a nice little urban environment, perfect for the Petitioner's City, as well as that epic centerpiece, which is going to be a delicious, delicious Administratum complex. So that's the outskirts of the palace really starting to come together. I've got some versatile bunker complexes for some foundation interiors, and those are kind of the beginnings of moving inwards towards the main part of the palace itself. I can't wait to get into a full-on mental scratch build and start building up the bulwarks and the walls of the Imperial Palace, but all of that is going to have to wait until I'm in New Zealand and I've got the space to start building it. I can't wait to show you guys the next couple of videos, really honing in on the 3D printed elements of the project. There's some really, really cool builds coming out there. And make sure that you check out the massive campaign that features all of these builds in various formats. I've got the link down in the description. And leave a comment below which of the 3 techniques we briefly looked at today is your favorite. What do you prefer to do when you're hobbying at home? If you're keen to support the channel, you can use my affiliate links down below to grab amazing prices on all your Warhammer needs in the UK, US, New Zealand, Canada, and the EU. And if you're really excited about what I'm doing here on Zorpazorp, please check out my Patreon. I would love to have you support me. That is all linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.